Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We're going to start off first looking back over our last 60 days. So this graphic here shows you the percent of normal precipitation we've seen just here for the last couple of months. And the areas that really just jump out to me are this region in through here, and then this region in through here. We've had a discussion about this as of late. What we're missing from the flow that could really just enhance the precipitation in this area is what we call the subtropical jet stream. And that's, again, the piece that comes from like the Central Pacific and kind of extends into the southwest, into the southern plains, and then helps to return a lot of moisture here from the lower Mississippi River Valley over toward the Carolinas. Now, if you take a look here at the pattern we've seen since October the 1st, the graphic I'm showing you here are wind anomalies. Now, let me show you what I'm really kind of honing in on. The jet stream pattern has really favored doing this a lot, and you've probably recently seen all of the incredibly heavy rainfall we've had in British Columbia. But do you notice how there's nothing here? All right, there's no strong component of the flow going that direction. That's the lack of the subtropical jet. In fact, we have favored more high pressure in this area. Can you see the arrows? They're coming around like this. And that is one of the dominating factors early this winter that's really influenced our pattern. Now, is this typical of La Nina? Absolutely. Yes, it is. In fact, just to remind you, this is what we typically get October and November, when the ocean temperatures in the Central Pacific are cold. So the warmer colors here represent drier than average conditions, and the bluer colors represent wetter than average. So you can see those same areas that I was highlighting showing up on the drier side of things. So here's the big question. All right, when does this La Nina peak? Or I should have said questions. When does the La Nina peak? Does this influence continue? And what does this all mean for our temperature pattern as well as we move forward? So let's get those questions answered because we have some brand new long-range data to discuss. First, current ocean temperatures. You can still see this La Nina is extending pretty far into the Pacific, and it's strengthening. Likely, though, reaching its peak right now. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that, by really focusing on the nose of the trade winds. Because what's most important about this forecast is going to be the interaction between the trade winds and the Madden-Julian oscillation. At this stage, the only extratropical feature that I'm most honed in on is the cold water that you see right here. All right. So what this means, the combination of these events means, is we're going to be watching for the position and strength of the Pacific jet stream as it enters the west. We'll be watching for the possible development of a subtropical component, although the possibilities right now are relatively low. But we're going to link up all of these ocean temperature patterns to what our long-range forecast looks like. So I did a little research here to try to understand what happens to the MJO in fall and late fall, okay? So up to about this point in the year when we have a La Nina going. And what you see here is that the most common phase that the MJO stays in is phases 5 and 6 and possibly into 7. Now, again, what does that mean? Well, remember when we look at the MJO, phase 1 is here, okay? 2, 3, 4. Phase 5 is here. Phase 6 is there, 7 is here, and then 8 is out here over the Pacific. Now, why does it favor 5, 6, and sometimes 7? Well, it's because the trade winds extend to about this point where they meet up with some westerly winds coming across the Indian Ocean. And where they meet, you get rising air. So therefore, that's going to tell us where the transport of heat and energy and momentum is going to come out of the tropics, which is the most important factor of, honestly, of the Earth atmosphere system. It's going to tell us where that jet stream is going to extend to. That's why we look at this all the time. So again, we favor phase 4, 5, and 6, or excuse me, 5, 6, and 7. Now, this La Nina, okay, has been cooling with time, bounced back up in early November, and has stayed relatively steady. You don't see a dramatic drop in ocean temperatures here, which would suggest this La Nina is approaching its peak. And I'm now starting to get some evidence of that. Now, this graphic is always a difficult one to read. But what I want you to notice is, you see how they're all numbered here, 1 through 8? That's the MJO phase. Wherever you see the blue-green colors, wherever they're sitting on top of, that's where the MJO currently is. So it's in phase, almost in phase 6 right now. But you can see that these colors kind of shift with time, kind of coming over into this area, which means the MJO is going to move over into phase 7 for a while. Now, you can also see that if you look down at this graphic. What you've got here is in blue-green, the nose of the trade wind, so they're going in this direction, all right? And then you have the kind of the westerly wind burst coming out of the Indian Ocean here. And of course, they're going in that direction. Now, what I've been kind of talking about is find right where they meet. And what you notice is the trade winds begin to slacken once you get out here about mid-month. Now that is maybe our first indication that this La Nina is likely going to peak at some point in December or early January. And that's going to move the MJO from phase 6 over to phase 7. Okay, so what does this mean for us? Well, we have to ask the question, how long do we stay in phase 6? And then as it gets into phase 7 toward, the 13th through the 20th of this month, how long does it stay here? And do we finally get a progression of the MJO? Because that could happen if this La Nina really backs off. Now, I want to show you something. If November through December favors phases 5, 6, and 7, take a look at this. When we get into January through March, the MJO likes to favor phase 7, move quickly through 8, and come around to phase 2. So what that tells me is a bit of a reset happens when the La Nina kind of breaks after December and January. And here's the result. Right now, while the MJO moves over to phase 7, we develop a ridge over the southeast. So that means that we're going to see warmth. That means we're going to see a storm track that's going to try to stay a bit to our north. That's the main takeaway for this for North Carolina. Phase 7 in December. What about phase 7 in January? Now this is a pretty strong signal here that a big ridge develops in the Gulf of Alaska. So the flow does this. Now that ends up giving us a more active pattern, but big time shots at colder air. I said shots, not continuous cold, but shots at colder air. The continuous cold is here from the Canadian Prairie through the Midwest. So if we get into phase 7 in January, this could be a very, very active time period for us. Now you saw the other part of it. What if it goes over to phase 8 in January? The pattern tends to progress, and then it could lead, if we get into phase 8, to more sustained cold at times. It's all about where the ridge is in the west. Is it here along the west coast, or is it in the Gulf of Alaska? That determines the downstream trough and then what happens in the North Atlantic. So these are the things that I'm watching most carefully. And if we get into phase 2, this is probably the most active phase we have for the Ohio River Valley. And therefore we get lashed by fronts that come through here, but then we warm back up and then have these massive trail-offs in temperatures. So you see, this is the progression we're trying to study and understand with La Nina, and so are the models. So here you go. This is looking at, in fact, let's not just look at December, let's look at the whole season. There you go. And maybe let's step forward one more. December, January, February. No, January, February, March. Do you see how we kind of hang on to a little bit higher than normal atmospheric pressure here? Well, as a result of that, the net effect is the active storm track is here around that high, and we could be drier in this vicinity. Now, this latest model run, again looking at January, February, March precipitation, is not nearly as dry as the previous runs were for North Carolina and surrounding states. That's a good signal. What about those temperatures, though? This is where I think the models are biased way too warm. I think they've really given a strong influence to a big subtropical ridge here, and I think at times it's going to break down. So while this looks quite mild for January, February, March, I think we're actually going to see temperatures at times really diving. I don't think we're going to stay mild as often as the model may suggest. There's a lot of cold air being bottled up in Alaska, throughout Canada, and the moment those big ridges form in the Gulf of Alaska, that just lets this all out. It says, send it down, and that will occur. So I think we need to be prepared for a very volatile winter. And I think the longer term risk for drought in the Carolinas is starting to back off a little bit. Now, of course, I could be wrong with this. It's all going to depend on the strength and the development of a potential subtropical ridge here. But there's better indicators that should the La Nina peak and begin to fade, that we return toward what I would call just more normal precipitation patterns. That's the long range. Now, let's just get through the month of December here. So if I come back and show you mid-December through mid-January, that's what you're looking at here. This is still at the point where there could be that dominant subtropical ridge, and we are a little bit drier than average. But the west looks wet, the Midwest looks wet, the Ohio River Valley, Tennessee Valley looks wet. And as a result, this does not mean a completely dry next 45 days. It just means the likelihood of us being above average on precip is rather limited. What about those temperatures? We'll take a look at this. Next, that same time period, through January 15th, they say we're going to favor more mild days. The models are keying in on that. But I still think we're going to see shots of colder air that are going to come through on deep troughs let go of through the Canadian prairie that get through the Great Lakes and down to North Carolina. So that's your long range right now. We kind of did the big monthlies first, and then we just did the next 45 days or so. Let's kind of hone in on what we've got in the near term, and I'm going to finish this up with a bit about South America, okay? Okay, right now what we're dealing with, let's get that like that. We had a front that slid through the Tennessee Valley overnight. So this is 11 a.m. on Monday morning, and what we're going to see is that front's going to slide through North Carolina this afternoon, this evening. Scattered showers, possibly some thunderstorms along that front, but this is not delivering a lot of precipitation. After that, high pressure builds in. But we're going to be watching right down here on Tuesday afternoon, evening for some coastal low development. And do you see that? It could possibly spread some showers in through this area. So this is through Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And we could get on the eastern side of the state better chances of having some rain here through Wednesday morning. So we got two chances really of getting some precip, but these totals are not very high. From there, let's flip over to the European to see how it picks up on this pattern moving forward. So that's the first front right there coming through Monday night into Tuesday morning. Not much precip being spread there. And then you notice, watch again, the Europeans got it as well. This is Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, getting into Wednesday evening. So if I just rock back and forth on the day on Wednesday, you can see better chances of precipitation east and possibly some snow in the Appalachian Mountains. All right, that system passes through. We have another one that goes through the Great Lakes here into Ontario and Quebec on Thursday into Friday morning. And what that does is it actually opens the gates here for another system to kind of sneak out of Colorado and head towards Chicago. We call that a Colorado low on Saturday, excuse me. The net effect is to drag a front right here through North Carolina. And this would be coming in on Saturday evening. And that's going to spread some precipitation for our weekend, and you can see some snow here in the Appalachian Mountains. So we have actually multiple chances of getting some precip this week, but it's not as though it's anything that's going to be a massive soaking event. And after we get past that front, look at this. This is Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, evening. Let's just go through Monday and out to Tuesday. Big dome of high pressure builds in. So we get all the way out to Wednesday the 15th, and high pressure builds in after that. So we stitch it all together. Let's just take a look at the national picture here. First front comes through right there. This is the one tonight into tomorrow morning. We're talking about relatively low precip amounts. You can match them up down here. We're talking a 1/10 to 3/10 of an inch at most. Okay, the second chance comes through there. Hits primarily the eastern half of the state on Wednesday. See it? So we add up here, possibly putting in some places better than a 1/2 inch to an inch of rain. Could get around Wilmington, maybe an inch of rain. After that, we wait until right here, which would be the weekend system. And that's a system coming through on Saturday into Sunday that could possibly increase precipitation for us yet again. You put all that together and compare it to average. Oops, let's do that here. There we go. Our precipitation for the next 7 days is pretty close to normal. Okay, got a couple of areas that are a little greener, but other than that, this is pretty normal precipitation for this time period in the month of December. Now, on the snow side of it, just want to show you something. You see some snow coming into the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia on Wednesday, and then right here, see that little added bit? That would be over the weekend. So I'm just letting you know there could be some snow into that area if you have to drive over the mountains this weekend. Okay, where do we go from this pattern? Well, you know that we're moving into MJO Phase 7, and that really favors a big ridge here. So by mid-December, look at the deep trough in the west, big ridge in the southeast, and the pattern just wants to stay there. See that? It just wants to stay there all the way out to December 21st. So that week 2 time period with that ridge in place says we could favor more drier conditions, while the west, with the deep trough digging down, could be wetter. But that was consistent. We expected that. That's what the MJO was doing. That connected with La Nina. So I don't think there's any major surprises there. Let's flip over to a discussion on temperatures. And we'll begin first with this map, which says we're looking here at the last 30 days of precipitation anomalies. Now, we have had some colder weather in place at times. It did, of course, warm up last week, which was nice. But I think we're going to see a bit of a pattern reversal here, west to east, as we move forward. I think we should just show you what those temperatures look like. So these are max temperatures today. Again, quite warm compared to average, but you can see the cold air that's behind this. So that front does come over us tomorrow. We saw that, brings in the little chance of precipitation. But look at this. Today we go from a high of 68, we drop 20 degrees tomorrow to 47. That's in Raleigh. All right, Wednesday's even cooler, and that's where we get the rain on the eastern side of the state. We get a rebound, though. There's Thursday. Watch. Friday into Saturday of next weekend, 67. But know that this comes in with some precipitation. And there's Sunday's highs. Looking out beyond that, let's shrink this up so we can see a bit better. There we go. Maybe one more. This would be day 5 through 10. Again, with that ridge redeveloping, we're going to favor more mild days. But you can see the cold air, I'm telling you, that could get let out. And day 10 through 15 isn't quite letting it out just yet. That big ridge associated with MJO phase 7 is there. But this is waiting in the wings, and I want you to all to keep a very close eye on it. All right, that gets us to temperature forecasts in the near term. Let's finish this up with a bit of a discussion about South America. December 15 through January 15, there you go, we can see it. The risk because of this La Nina is south. Could hit parts of southern Brazil, but it's really going to hit Argentina. That's been a very consistent picture. If this doesn't develop, this would be a pretty large failure in the models. Plus, this would be very much against what the La Nina would say historically. So I'm concerned right now about parts of southern Brazil and Argentina moving forward. And it's not just over the next 45 days out to January 15. It's the longer term. This is January, February, March, and that whole region is expected to continue to favor more dry conditions. So I think we're going to start to see some issues coming out from South America about possible issues with the quality and quantity of the crop in southern Brazil and Argentina, and that could be a market story moving forward. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Appreciate your attention today. We'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.